Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the English Talks. Today, I'm bringing you a story that will touch your heart and inspire your mind, a story about science, love, courage, and truth. It's about a woman who mixed chemistry with courage and created a formula for change. This is Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. Chapter 1: A Woman Who Asked Why. Our story begins in the 1960s, a time when women were expected to cook, smile, and stay quiet. But Elizabeth Zott was different. She was a chemist, smart, fearless, and endlessly curious. Every day in the laboratory, her male colleagues joked about her work. They said things like, "Miss Zott, maybe you should make us coffee instead." Elizabeth would smile and reply calmly, "I don't make coffee. I make discoveries." She worked twice as hard to be taken seriously. To her, chemistry wasn't just science, it was a way to understand life itself. "Chemistry is change," she once said. And change begins when you question what everyone else accepts. Chapter 2: Love and Respect. In that same lab worked Calvin Evans, a quiet genius, awkward, brilliant, and lonely. Most people found him strange, but Elizabeth found him fascinating. One day, during an argument over a failed experiment, Calvin shouted, "You think you know everything." Elizabeth looked him in the eye and said softly, "No, I just know what's right." That was the moment Calvin fell in love with her. Their love grew like a perfect chemical reaction. Strong, balanced, and pure. They didn't talk about romance, they talked about atoms and truth. Their chemistry was literal and emotional. Calvin said, "You make science beautiful." Elizabeth replied, "Science is beautiful. People just don't see it yet." Together, they built a quiet, beautiful life, filled with books, experiments, and laughter. But happiness, like unstable elements, doesn't always last. Chapter 3: The Loss. One morning, Calvin went out for a run with their dog. 6:30, he never came back. A car hit him. Just like that, he was gone. Elizabeth was broken. She cried for days. But life, like chemistry, always reacts. Soon, she discovered she was pregnant. And in that moment of darkness, a small light began to grow inside her. Chapter 4: Motherhood and Survival. The lab fired her. Neighbors judged her. Society whispered behind her back. But Elizabeth didn't bow down. She gave birth to a baby girl, Madeline, or Mad. And she decided to raise her daughter with knowledge and truth, not fear. When Mad was old enough to talk, she asked, "Mom, why don't people like us?" Elizabeth said, "Because we don't pretend. And pretending makes people comfortable." Elizabeth taught her chemistry at the kitchen table. Mad is no ordinary child. At 4 years old, she's already reading chemistry notes and asking deep questions. "Mom, why do people lie?" Elizabeth replies softly, "Because they are afraid of truth, my dear. But we are scientists, we face truth." They mixed vinegar and baking soda, watched bubbles rise. And Mad laughed and clapped her hands. "See, Mad," Elizabeth said. "This is what happens when elements meet, something new is created. Just like us." Chapter 5, Supper at 6. One day, life changed again. Elizabeth met Walter Pine, a TV producer. He needed a host for a new cooking show. Elizabeth laughed, "I'm a chemist, not a cook." But Walter said, "You cook, don't you?" Elizabeth smiled, "Yes, but I call it applied chemistry." And so, Supper at 6 was born. On her very first episode, she looked straight into the camera and said, "Cooking is chemistry. And women are scientists too." Her words hit like lightning. Women across America stopped what they were doing to listen. She explained each recipe like an experiment. "Today we're adding sodium chloride, or as you call it, salt." She wears her lab coat and speaks honestly. "Today, we're not boiling water. We're breaking hydrogen bonds." She says, "Don't just follow the recipe, question it." That's how discoveries are made. But the real magic wasn't the food. It was her message. Every time she spoke, she said what women had always wanted to hear. You are not just a housewife. You are smart, capable, and strong. You can question the world. You can change it. Her popularity exploded. Letters flooded in from women saying, "You gave me hope. You made me believe I can do more." But with fame came resistance. The TV bosses said, "Smile more. Be softer. Stop talking about science." Elizabeth refused. "If I have to choose between truth and fame," she said, "I'll always choose truth." Chapter 6, Mad's Journey and 630's Wisdom. While Elizabeth became famous, her daughter Mad struggled at school. She was too smart, too curious, too different. Teachers didn't understand her. Her best friend was their dog, 630, a loyal, intelligent companion who understood more than anyone knew. In the novel, he even has his own thoughts and observing how humans treat each other with confusion and sadness. 630 represents loyalty, wisdom, and the pure heart of the story. Chapter 7: The Past Uncovered. As Elizabeth's life moved forward, she discovered painful truths about Calvin's past. He was an orphan, rejected by his adoptive family. That's why he never talked about love, he was afraid to lose it again. Learning this made Elizabeth love him even more, and she realized that everyone carries invisible scars. Sometimes, she said, the strongest people are the ones still learning to heal. Chapter 8: Change and Courage. Even after the show was cancelled, Elizabeth's influence never stopped. She returned to her first love, the science. She began working on her own research again, teaching MAD, and inspiring other women to study. Her kitchen stayed her lab and her heart stayed full of questions. "We are all scientists," she said. "We observe, we test, we fail, and we try again. That's life. That's chemistry." 10 years later, Mad grows up strong, confident, and fearless, a reflection of her mother, inspired by her mother's strength and curiosity. She dreams of becoming an astronaut. To see what's beyond the sky, her mother taught her to question. In the final chapter, Elizabeth says, "Life is full of reactions, some are slow. Some explode, but every one of them changes us." In the scene before ending, Elizabeth looks at her daughter and says, "Mad, don't ever let the world tell you what you can't do." And Mad answers, "I won't, Mom. Because you already proved I can." Elizabeth looks at the sky and says to her daughter, "Mad, remember this, you don't need permission to be amazing." And Mad replies with a smile, "I know, Mom. You already taught me that." Themes and messages. 1. Empowerment. Women can do anything: science, leadership, or art. 2. Truth. Don't fake who you are to fit in. 3. Education. Knowledge gives freedom. 4. Love. Real love respects, not controls. 5. Courage. Even one voice can spark change. And that's the story of Lessons in Chemistry. A woman who turned her pain into power, her kitchen into a classroom, and her life into a lesson for the world. Elizabeth Zott taught us that chemistry isn't just in test tubes, it's in every change we make, every truth we speak, and every dream we refuse to give up. Thank you for listening to the English Talks. If you loved this story, don't forget to subscribe and share. Because like Elizabeth says, change begins with one reaction.